Welcome back to Reimagine. Here we are in the 9th iteration of this conference. We started off as Reimagine 2020, but already we've had to move into the new year and well beyond that. So here we are. I think there's so much still to talk about, so much still to develop in this growing ecosystem and growing space. And speaking of developing, one of the key things we need to talk about, and an underspoken about element of the blockchain ecosystem, particularly in sort of mainstream coverage and media, is that, of course, of the developers. I think so many people sort of think, that's just going on in the background. It's inevitable. It is what it is. We don't need to think about it. Developers do what developers do. But the guest I'm speaking to today says otherwise. This isn't simply a case of it's going to happen organically. There needs to be, conscious thought put in. There needs to be new iterations put into the space. And if we want to get the sort of productivity that we hope for out of this space, we need to iterate and develop. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Chris Swenor, Reach co-founder and CEO. Chris, firstly, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Asher. I'm so happy to talk about developers because that is the number one thing I care about in the space.
It's such a critical element of the space. So before we do, get into that conversation about Reach and the role that you guys are trying to play, let's move things backwards. Let's, do a little bit of a narrative switch here and help to define the problem. Because I think that's something that's, so often put backwards in the space where so many companies exist and so many products exist looking for a problem. But with you guys, the problem existed fundamentally. So let's imagine a world where Reach doesn't exist and bring that problem to the fore and break it down. And I'll start it with a question. What does the current landscape look like for blockchain developers?
Sure. Yeah, this is the thing that gets me out of the bed in the morning. The blockchain development is hard. It's very, very hard. And it's not like traditional development. So many people think it's like, oh, well, there's tens of millions of developers in the world. They're just build blockchain applications. That's just not the case. And the reason is because blockchain development is so different than traditional development that they can't just transition over. Right now, if you were asking me to say, Chris, I want you to build a DEX, I would not hire a developer that doesn't have at least 1 year of full-time experience building smart contracts, which is nuts because there's not many of them out there. So it's really hard to find developers to build things. Now, the reason why it's so hard is because when you're building blockchain applications, you are thinking at a different level of abstraction. You're building a state machine rather than what you're traditionally doing. You're coding at a higher level closer to business logic. Now, this is not something that regular developers think about at all. Like, figuring out all the potential states that your machine will need to handle, all the different positions that someone's going to try to attack your application because of it being out in the open. But it just takes a long time just to kind of switch your thinking over. Now, yeah, so that makes the blockchain development longer to learn, and it takes longer to actually develop because it's a low level as well. But say you actually figure out, okay, I have a developer, they have a year of experience, now they're going to build. But here's the other thing, because of how blockchain is that there's zero budget for bugs. Like, I don't know how many developers that out there, but I've never met a developer that has never written a bug. Like, that's just not possible. So, but because the immutable state of the blockchain, if you accidentally put a loophole in your code, you lose. It's game over. Like, somebody can come in and it's easy to see where the hole is, and someone can just pull all of the money out of your contract and then they're done. So what has to happen is that the audits have to happen. So you hire that team, they spend a long time building it, and now you have to go out and get an audit, maybe 1, 2, 3, depending on how much money's going to be on the contract, and that is expensive. We're talking about even Ethereum, which is the biggest. You're talking like $60K to actually get an audit done. The other chains out there that don't have that many auditors are over $100,000, $200,000, and startups can't afford that. And if you don't, you're risking all of your users' money. So you have to figure out that solution. What do you do there? And then, like, say you have it audited, but now you're trapped. Now you're only on one chain, because if you want to go to another chain, the technology is completely different. You have to learn a complete new technology to launch somewhere else. So, and so there's that. But there's also the whole thing is like, since every chain, or not every chain, but most chains have a different technology for way of building, it fragments the community even more. A small community is even smaller because of the knowledge required to build on that specific chain. So it's really hard to actually get that help and actually kind of build a community. So kind of to sum it all up, the state of blockchain development right now is extremely hard.
Extremely hard, and I think it's such an important point you raised there about, this equals money. Most people, when you think, most sort of startups and development that's going on in the sort of more classic sense, it was more, maybe they're, setting up a cool social media space, or maybe they're, an API connecting kit, or I don't know, but it's something that, there's a tolerance for bugs. The bug occurs, okay, we fix it, we deal with it, but this is people's money we're talking about. You talk about most blockchain development, you're either talking about like critical infrastructure, logistics, finance, money. People have a very low tolerance for screw ups, right? So, I mean, can we just sort of give it a little more credit to that weight there, about what this means, about what that tolerance for error really is?
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. When smart contracts start getting close to trillions of dollars of money actually locked into them, which it's coming, and we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. That is a sweet honeypot. That is like real assets that are locked in an immutable way. Now, as a hacker, I think if I crack into that honeypot, I could be a trillionaire if I figure it out. They're going to try really, really hard because there's no taking it back. I mean, sure, you can go around like, you talk about, okay, well, if something that did happen, it would decrease the actual price of the token, so they don't really get that much. But either way, like, there's zero budget for bugs because like you can't roll back a database. I mean, you do. You're doing a whole hard fork that's changing everything. So that's kind of like the space. This is not centralized development. Like in centralized development, somebody hacks your servers and modifies the data, modifies the state of your application. You just tap into your backups. Hopefully you do have backups, but then you send out a letter to email to all of your users and say, hey, sorry, there was a hiccup. I slapped my wrist, but we're fine. But in blockchain, you slap on the wrist, you lost all of your money. Like, that's a different story.
Right. So, I mean, okay, we've defined the problem. I think we've, really set up what the stakes are. So, I mean, in terms of developers now, how many people out there are there that can actually reliably develop and audit in this space? I mean, we talked about the high barriers to entry, but who are the people? You say you need at least a year of experience and whatnot.
Right.
What are the sort of numbers we're talking in a rough sense?
So, the last information I read was, I think, from Electric Capital, as a VC that came out last year, and it was they measured it in the low thousands. Like, I think it was something like 5,000 or 6,000 developers working on blockchain full time in the entire world. Compare that to the tens of millions. But like, let's talk about why is blockchain being hard and so few developers an actual problem? Developers, users are what matters. Who cares? But if you look at other like industries, you look at the personal computer, you look at the smartphone, what took it from a niche platform to mainstream? And that is killer application, a killer application that users use, right? Well, how do you create a killer application? Like, if I asked you what will be the next killer application, would you be able to know?
No idea.
No. That's the thing, is it's impossible to know what the next killer application is. If it was possible, VCs would invest in one company and then cash out. So like, by the definition there is that killer applications are a numbers game. So blockchain will never be mainstream unless more developers are in the space and throwing ideas at the wall that I and maybe even you think are idiotic, but end up being the next killer app because because of memes or something that takes off. But that will never happen unless there's hundreds of thousands of developers making stupid things like fart apps because it's so easy to build blockchain applications on the blockchain.
A critically important point, there about growing the space and taking it to that next level. So let's stop dancing around the bush. Let's get to the point here now. Reach, what are you guys doing? How are you planning to change the game? And sort of what is your approach to fixing this problem as we've defined it, of a lack of developers, high barriers for entry, high costs for entry into the space?
Yeah. So there's multiple issues, and we would have been, crazy to try to tackle them all. Well, we are crazy, and we took a big risk. We said, okay, well, not only does it need to be easier, it needs to be safer, and we need to make it so that we can have extreme network effects. That is something that we need to do. We need to do it in a way that's not iterative. It's not good enough to take the current way of building things and making it a little bit better, because a piece of crap, a little bit better, is still a piece of crap. And that's where we are with blockchain. Like blockchain development being a little bit better by building development tools to make it a little better won't move the needle. So we asked ourselves, okay, well, what does blockchain development look like if it's 100 times better? And the answer was blow everything away and start over. Forget what blockchain development is, and really kind of bring in the best people in the world to build an entire ecosystem that makes it so that a traditional developer can come in and within a week build a safe, sophisticated blockchain application. But not only do we need to lower the bar of entry, we need to actually raise the bar of potential, meaning that this same tool in the hands of an expert can do more. That is the other thing that we need to do, is because we didn't want to build like a toy that gets people into the space. We want to actually completely revolutionize what blockchain development is. And that's what we did with Reach. It was a huge risk because obviously, as you can understand, tackling that many things took a long time. My co-founder, Jay McCarthy, has been actually a computer researcher for the last 15 years. And the last 15 years of his research has kind of like bundled up into what Reach is today. So it took a long time of him and his knowledge to be able to do what we did, what we have. But what Reach is, it's a programming language that is a JavaScript syntax. So it's a higher level of abstraction. So you don't need to think about building state machines anymore. You build at the participant level. And it's because it's at a higher level, it's much shorter and quicker to write. So a regular developer can actually read it and understand what application is doing without getting confused about building a state machine. But the other thing that we did is we harnessed a thing called formal verification. And what formal verification is the best analogy that I use is if you remember back in geometry, where you're given a formula and your teacher said, hey, prove that formula is correct. You didn't just put values into the variables and test what the output was. You actually wrote out a multiple line proof to prove that formula is correct. Well, that's what formal verification is, but it's the art of turning your entire application into a math problem and then proving that math problem is correct in all potentialities. So that's super PhD math level things that companies like Runtime Verification, who some of the smartest people in the world do in a manual way. And they do it for like NASA, and they do it for hardware manufacturers, or and even like in Uniswap and Maker do formal verification as well. But the problem is doing it that way is really hard, like even harder than blockchain development, which you heard me talk about how hard blockchain development is, and it takes a long time to do. But what Reach has done is we've put that power in the hands of the developer, so that through the compilation process, our compiler automatically generates those proofs. And all the developer has to do is put in single line assertions into their code, and it will automatically generate the proofs for you. So it puts like the power of these super geniuses in the hands of regular developers, our developers building an application. And the final thing that we did was we made Reach blockchain agnostic. So developer can come in, write their application, and then decide after they write it where they want to launch it through a configuration change. It's the same exact application. When we first started this, we thought, hey, like this is gonna be cool. People can launch on multiple applications. We found out through this process that nobody's really actually launching on multiple different chains. They kind of pick their chain and kind of launch there. But what we did actually find is network effects. In our community, we have Ethereum developers helping Algorand developers, helping Cardano developers, and they have no idea. They're building tools, they're building frameworks that they're sharing help, and they don't even ask where they're launching it. So it removed that toxicity as well. So like, oh, your chain's trash, like it's gone. And that's really one of my favorite features about Reach is like the crypto toxicity is now gone.
And that interoperability is so critical. It's sort of the next, people call it a buzzword, but I think it's a next critical step, a next critical trend, in the crypto space, going from this, one winner takes all sort of, reductionist sort of deductive, approach distributive approach to negotiation to an integrative approach where we can all grow together and the pie as a whole can really be sort of grown no matter what chain you're in.
Right.
And I guess that's so critical to think about how the community has responded. I mean, you touch on that a little bit, saying that there's been this good integrative sort of approach happening between developers, but how are developers as a whole responding to Reach, as a community and what you're trying to do?
The thing that has actually been really exciting to me is how hungry traditional developers are to actually build blockchain applications. Because the thing is like, well, if there's only a few thousand in there, people just must not care. That's not the truth. The truth was that they couldn't do it. And the fact is that in September of 2020, we finally opened our doors and said, hey, we finally have an MVP that people can use. Since then, we've actually grown 10 to 20% every single week to the point of we just onboarded our 1,200th developer in that amount of time. And in the development platform space, that's nuts growth. But when you actually look at it through the crypto lens, saying that we have 1,200 developers building blockchain applications on our platform is extremely amazing. Well, I mean, I'm a little bit biased, but yeah, our growth is through the roof.
It's something to be proud of, and no need to be humble in this space. Achievement's a good achievement. But is there a way you can tangibilize this for me? Bring it down to brass tacks. Before you were saying it was 60,000 to develop on Ethereum and 100 to 200 on other chains. It was taking months to deploy, all this sort of thing. Do you have sort of a breakdown of what it stands now versus what it would have been before Reach in sort of the pre-Reach traditional space?
Yeah. So what our goal is, like I said, we've grown 10 to 20% every single week. Where our goal is that in the next 18 months, we want to onboard 16,000 developers onto Reach. And what that means is that when we hit 16,000, we believe that the majority of applications in all of blockchain will be built on Reach. And we're actually ahead of that growth path. Where would we be with the outreach? I mean, we'd be in the same spots as we always were, as blockchain development being too hard. And there's great tools out there, Hardhat, Truffle, that iteratively make the blockchain experience better, but iteratively is not good enough. It's making the hard thing better rather than just making it practical. And that's what Reach does, is it makes blockchain development practical.
I suppose I wonder as well, I mean, is your focus, when you look at who you're aiming to bring on board, obviously you've said you want new developers and developers that haven't worked in the blockchain space before to come on board, but is your goal simply to make it simple enough to bring these developers on, or is there an educational aspect to it as well? And for those who haven't developed in the blockchain space, are you trying to educate them on the advantages and possibilities?
So I'll let you peek behind the curtain a little bit of what our growth and how we actually been able to grow so much is that it's purely based on education. The way that we look at it is that there's a two-pronged approach to education. There's the hunters and gatherers. There's the hunters that go out and inspire. They build applications that are practical solutions that the traditional developer care about, actually doing practical things. And we use Reach to build those tools, like say building a DEX, building a lending platform, building NFTs, whatever, in a very simple, easy way, but use Reach as the platform to actually inspire developers. The other prong of that fork is all about curriculum and education. It's a plan to actually take somebody from beginner to expert, but not a beginner to expert in Reach development, because people don't care about Reach development. What they care about is being able to develop decentralized applications and provide value. So our curriculum is not only how to build things with Reach, it's what do you need to think about when you're building in a decentralized way? What are the gotchas? Why are you actually even attempting to do this in the first place? And answering those questions to make sure you build a solid theoretical foundation so that you can pair that with the actual coding itself.
An absolutely critical point to think about, getting to that true educational space, that true iterative space. And, I want to step back to something you said before. You spoke about blockchain agnosticism. You spoke about, having developers, in an interoperable manner, go across chain. But surely, when you're talking about development in the blockchain, as we think about, different chains out there and what they propose and what they offer, surely there must be some, all chains may be equal, but some are more equal than others. There must be chains out there that are better for development purposes, that are better to work on. Do you take a view on that at Reach, or are you truly aiming for pure agnosticism regardless of quality of product that's out there?
So the way that I look at it is that Reach exists and has synergy with all blockchains to take away the thing that they shouldn't have to care about. Like, we are focused on onboarding and allowing developers to build. We want the protocols to focus on the underlying pieces, the consensuses, the way that they actually make whatever the development work, be it to focus on speed or scalability or whatever. And at the end of the day, we want to make it so that developer can actually pick a chain based off of the features and not how hard it is to actually build on it. And so what this has done is it allows for chains like Algorand, which has much more scalability, much more scalability, the actual cost is really low. And what we've done is we've made it easier for developers to actually launch on that platform without having to learn a new language. And so you can take advantage of, they can now take advantage of Reach handling the onboarding, so they can focus on making those things better. They actually make it even faster, make it even cheaper to actually be able to launch on and to grow. And this is actually, I believe, in a future world where blockchain, there will be many blockchains, because the blockchains will offer different things. Like, say, like, oh, I really don't care about decentralization. This is not an application that is very big on that. So, well, we'll pick blockchain X because it's cheaper, faster, but maybe it's not decentralized. Or maybe we go and say, okay, well, I really care about decentralization. I really care about censorship resistance. And maybe we pick one that is fully decentralized and can handle it. And developers shouldn't have to really completely commit to one way or another and completely learn new technology. They should just be able to pick, learn Reach and let us handle the boring underlying parts.
So that's so interesting to me, because I have been having this conversation across this conference with different people about whether or not we're heading for a mono-chain world or a multi-chain world or a highly diversified multi-chain world, maybe a bi-chain world or whatever it might be. And there's only a few surviving, many surviving, whatnot. You're presenting a picture in which ultimately, by having this second layer, this alternate layer, accessibility for developers, they will want to develop on whatever chain most suits the particular right. DApp or whatever they're producing at the time. But is that really? Is it a best technology wins, or is there not a sort of like a Metcalfe's law effect where eventually one network reigns supreme, or a couple of networks reign supreme, and the others go to the dust? How do you think about that in terms of a future trend?
Yeah, I mean. Let's be honest. The issue is that that has never happened before in the history of technology. I mean, for the actual infrastructure parts, like if you look at different type of processors, there's different type of processors, different type of operating system. There's different type of a lot of technologies to fit the actual need of the tool. By trying to actually cram everybody in one way, you're trading off. So, as a developer, knowing what you're building, you should be able to choose what your trade-off is. There's not a perfect solution. There's not something that scales infinitely, that is infinitely secure, that is that will never exist. The perfect solution will never exist. So what should happen, or what will happen, is that different chains will focus on different features, and those chains are going to house different types of applications. Like, say, maybe one chain will host DeFi with trillions of dollars of value baked on the chain, because sure, it's slower. Maybe it's not at 100 million billion transactions per second, but you can guarantee that it's going to be real and it's going to be what you expect. But say you're building a decentralized Twitter. And you care more about censorship resistance than maybe every message I put is going to be there, or I can guarantee that's going to be there. I don't want to be it to be removed. You know what I mean? So maybe I go with something that's a little bit less decentralized, or whatever factor is. Like, it's just the developer will want to decide what their own trade-offs are, and they won't want to completely learn a new technology when making that decision.
Absolutely. An important point. People don't want to have to completely start from scratch and get locked into particular ecosystems. All right, then. So, in sort of, you've touched on it, but I sort of want to drill down specifically into looking at what you see the future of the industry truly looking like. If we project out, I don't know, everyone has their own time scale. I don't want to give you a set one, but, we're talking long term, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, however far you can comfortably think ahead. What do you see the, blockchain development space truly looking like in that time when, in your utopic vision?
Yeah, I mean, the issue is that this kind of ties back to the whole you can't predict the killer app, right? It's impossible to actually predict the use case of blockchain because we have we are just scratching the surface as of the potential of blockchain. So what I will say is Reach is you can build on Reach now. You can build in actually like any developer can launch an application on Ethereum or Algorand and soon Conflux. And we're going to be adding more and more chains. But what we'll discover in the near future is these creative people will come in, and because they're now able to build things much easier and iterate much quicker on the actual development, things are going to actually be built that never existed before. And those are the things that are going to kick off the explosion of blockchain, of cryptocurrency in general. So it's very impossible to actually just say what is that thing that's going to be. But one thing that we do know for sure is I have faith in the innovation abilities of humankind. That if you give them the tools, they'll figure out how to put them together in a way that we can't think about because it's a numbers game. And that's the thing that I'm actually focusing on. And I do believe this is coming quickly. I mean, one of the examples that I like to talk about is the idea of the flash loan. A lot of people talk about, it's the bane of existence of crypto or whatever, but it's actually one of my favorite things that came out of the crypto space or the blockchain space is because it is a tool that doesn't exist outside of blockchain. Right. These are the things that are going to completely change the space of everything, is things that so many people are thinking like, okay, how do I make things more efficient built on blockchain? They exist somewhere else, but now they're on blockchain. Boring. Sure. That's, maybe they're more efficient. Maybe we can bring down the cost. Great. The super exciting things are the things that don't exist today. The things like the flash zone, things like resellable digital like video games, resellable MP3s, doing things like this that don't exist previously, that create entire new markets. That's when you're going to see that blockchain blows up and people stop saying blockchain because it'll be so easy to use that people don't care. How many times have you heard of somebody describe their application as a NoSQL based application? Right. You don't. Right. And that's where blockchain is going. And Reach is going to lead that, is because Reach is going to make blockchain boring. The exciting thing will be the applications built with Reach.
Wow, a powerful message and a powerful vision. I think you're 100% right. Once blockchain is the plumbing, the architecture that's tapped into the walls we don't even see, we don't even think about, that's when we know that no longer is this a rebellion, but incumbency has been achieved.
I mean, and I'm talking about this is going to happen within a year. We're not talking about in 5 years. We're to the point now where we have some features at Reach that are coming out this month that make it so that anything that's on DeFi that is created can be written in Reach. That is where we are, and how soon things are. And so this is when people start going, okay, well, what if we tweak this knob? And people are like, oh, that's loony. Why would you ever want to tweak that knob? And people do, and they're like, whoa, look at that awesome thing. So that is where we're going to get, because blockchain itself development will be boring, and the exciting thing will be the developers building the stuff on it.
Yeah, an exciting vision, and I look forward to seeing which knobs do get tweaked into the future.
Me too. I have no idea.
Exactly right, and that is the best, most exciting vision. But all right, Chris, I'm going to wrap us up there. So many good ideas to think about, so much to consider. For our audience to know, make sure you stick out through this whole conference, Reimagine. We go talking about all these sort of integrative, intuitive and unintuitive ideas that are coming through the space. But Chris, last words. I'll just let you take us out. Where can people go? What should people look for? If I'm a developer watching this, what should I be doing in regards to make the most of what you've got there?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a developer that doesn't have blockchain experience, there's not another option. You can spend a year learning how to do things the hard way, which you'll get there. But then even when you get there, you're going to be limited to what you can do. So the option really is Reach at this point. And the way to actually find us, it's a free service. It's an open source thing. It's not going to cost you any money. We have great tutorials. We have a very active Discord community. But if you just go to reach.sh, you'll be able to find everything there, everything from our Discord community to our documentation to information about the company. And you'll see, if you want to talk to me, just jump in the Discord. I talk probably way too much there. So.
That's what we like. We like a founder who's passionate and speaks directly to the community. All right, Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us. And for those watching, stay with us.
Thank you so much, Asher.